Why your budgie screams when you leave the room. This is what it really means. When your budgie screams the moment you walk out of the room, what's the first thing you think? Most owners assume it's demanding behavior. Attention-seeking. Maybe a little spoiled. So they wait it out. They don't come back until it's quiet, because they've been told that responding only makes it worse. But that advice was built on a misunderstanding of what your budgie actually is. And following it every day might be costing you something you can't easily get back. Here's what's really happening, and why it changes everything. 1. Your budgie isn't throwing a tantrum. It's sending a distress signal. In the wild, budgies live in flocks of hundreds. They are never alone. Not for a moment. The flock is not just company, it is survival. Predators target isolated birds. A budgie separated from its flock isn't just lonely. It is in danger, and its nervous system knows it. When you leave the room, your budgie doesn't think, they'll be back in 5 minutes. They think, the flock is gone. That scream isn't manipulation. It's a contact call, the exact same vocalization wild budgies use when they lose sight of their flock members. It means, I'm here. Where are you? Please answer. Every second you stay silent, that signal escalates. Because silence, to a flock animal, means something is wrong. 2. Ignoring it doesn't teach calm. It teaches abandonment. There is a common piece of advice passed around budgie forums and beginner care guides: don't respond to screaming or you'll reinforce it. The logic sounds reasonable. It comes from basic behavioral conditioning. But it applies to animals whose distress signals work differently. For a flock bird, the contact call is not a demand. It's a check-in. And when check-ins go unanswered, the bird doesn't learn patience. It learns that calling out doesn't work. That the flock doesn't answer. That it is, in the most fundamental sense, alone. Research on flock birds consistently shows that unresolved separation distress doesn't diminish over time, it deepens. What starts as a few loud calls can develop into chronic screaming, feather-destructive behavior, and anxiety that persists even when you're in the room. You weren't reinforcing bad behavior by responding. You were being a flock member. The silence was the mistake. 3. Your voice is the most powerful tool you have, and most owners never use it this way. You don't have to go back into the room every time your budgie calls. But you do have to answer. This is the shift that changes everything. When your budgie sends a contact call and you respond, even from another room, even with a whistle, a word, a soft sound, their nervous system receives exactly the signal it was looking for. The flock heard me. I'm not alone. Everything is fine. Studies on budgie vocal behavior show that contact call exchanges are the primary mechanism through which flock bonds are maintained across distance. It's not proximity that keeps the bond intact. It's response. Your budgie is not asking you to come back. They're asking you to answer. So answer. From the kitchen. From the hallway. Without walking back in, without making it a whole thing. Just let them hear your voice. Within days, most owners notice the screaming shortens. The calls become softer. Because the pattern your budgie needed, I call, the flock answers, has finally been established. 4. Some screaming isn't separation at all. It's something you've been misreading. Not every scream means the same thing. And this is where most owners lose the thread completely. Budgies have distinct vocalizations for distinct situations. The contact call, that repetitive, escalating cry when you leave, sounds different from an alarm call. Different from a frustration vocalization. Different from what some owners describe as the sunset scream, a burst of loud activity that happens naturally as the light changes in the evening. If your budgie screams at a specific time every day regardless of where you are, that's not separation. That's biology. If the scream is sharp, sudden, and stops quickly, that's an alarm, something in the environment startled them. A reflection. A sound outside. A shadow moving past the window. If the screaming only happens when you specifically leave, escalates the longer you're gone, and stops almost immediately when you answer, that's the contact call. And now you know what to do with it. Learning to tell the difference isn't complicated. It just requires actually listening instead of waiting for it to stop. 5. The budgies that scream the most are often the most bonded, and that's not a problem. It's information. Here's the part nobody tells you. A budgie that screams when you leave isn't a budgie with a behavior problem. It's a budgie that has decided, against every instinct it carries as a prey animal, that you are its flock. That decision didn't happen automatically. It happened across hundreds of small moments. Every time you were consistent. Every time you came back. Every time you were calm and present and predictable. Your budgie built a case for trusting you, and at some point, the case became strong enough that you became essential. The screaming is the proof of the bond. That doesn't mean it should go uncorrected. Chronic distress isn't healthy for your bird, and there are real steps you can take to build their independent confidence over time. Short, predictable separations. A consistent departure signal so your budgie learns, when they make that sound, they always come back. Gradual increases in solo time paired with environmental enrichment. But the first step is understanding what you're actually working with. Not a bird that's badly behaved. A bird that chose you. Completely. And is doing the only thing it knows how to do when the center of its world walks out of the room. 6. What you do in the next 7 days will either deepen the problem or start solving it. Most owners respond to screaming one of two ways: they give in immediately every single time, or they go completely silent and wait it out. Both approaches miss the point. What your budgie needs is a pattern it can predict. Start with the departure signal. Every single time you leave the room, same sound, same word, same whistle, something that means I'm leaving, and I'll be back. Repeat it every time without exception. Then answer the contact call from wherever you are. You don't have to return. Just respond. Then gradually, over days, stretch the time between their call and your response by a few seconds. Let them sit with the brief silence, then answer. Then stretch it again. What you're building isn't indifference. You're building confidence. Teaching your budgie that the call always gets answered, that silence is temporary, that the pattern holds. A budgie who trusts the pattern doesn't need to scream. Because they already know you're coming back. That's what the screaming was always trying to tell you. Not, give me attention. Not, I'm spoiled. You're my flock, and I can't hear you, and I need to know you're still there. Now you know how to answer. If your budgie does this, tell me in the comments. Tell me how long they scream, what stops it, what you've tried. I read everything. And if this shifted something for you, subscribe. Because we're just getting started.